We are still waiting on Kennedy to join us. So we'll just go ahead and get started and start to introduce the conversation, and he will join us as soon as he can. So today's session is Equal Footing, the Future of Partnership. And I would love to kind of introduce the panelists who are here to chat with us today before jumping into the topic. First, we have Lisa Bohmer, who leads the Conrad and Hilton Foundation's Young Children Affected by HIV and AIDS initiative, working with partners to improve early childhood development outcomes in East and Southern Africa. She's a public health professional with over 30 years of experience with programs, research, and grant making in the areas of pediatric HIV and AIDS, OVCs, maternal and child health, reproductive rights, and the empowerment of women and girls. So everyone, please, in the chat, go ahead and welcome Lisa. Thanks for joining us from California today. Mark Muriithi Laichena is the Africa Operations Director for Give Directly, a global NGO specialized in delivering digital cash transfers. He oversees Give Directly's country teams, implementing cash programs in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Liberia, Malawi, DRC, and Morocco, and also supports new project development. His current work includes a significant scale-up of work across countries to provide COVID-19 humanitarian response cash transfers, in addition to a portfolio of cash programs that provide unconditional lump sum grants or basic income support. And joining us soon, hopefully, is Kennedy Odede, who is one of Africa's best-known community organizers and social entrepreneurs. He's the founder of SHOFCO, the largest grassroots organization in Kibera, which today impacts over 1.5 million people and is on the front lines of the COVID response in Kenya's urban settlements, delivering healthcare, food relief, and economic stability at scale. In 2018, SHOFCO became the youngest ever organization to receive the Conrad and Hilton Humanitarian Prize, the world's largest humanitarian prize awarded to nonprofits that have made extraordinary contributions to alleviate human suffering. So I'm sure that you all who are joining us from your laptops, from your homes today, can help me to welcome these great speakers who are going to help us touch on questions around partnership and how to make partnerships more equitable. In terms of the context of our conversation today, we are really excited for the opportunity to have a really frank discussion on the challenges and rewards of partnerships, from the really ground level realities of implementation to the zoom out opportunities for new impact areas. COVID-19 this year has really, across many sectors and impact areas, acted as a highlighter for already existing lines of vulnerability in a lot of communities, and has simultaneously required organizations to ramp up existing forms of programs and services while innovating to find new ways to address novel challenges in a really complicated logistical context. So we're excited to have three really well-seasoned experts who each have their own perspective and insights on this process. So welcome, Mark and Lisa.
Thanks, Cher-Wen. Are there any topics you want us to jump in on, or should we wait on Kennedy, or what would you prefer?
Yeah, well, maybe while we're waiting for Kennedy, Mark, could you give us a little bit of background on the partnership that has taken place between Give Directly and SHOFCO?
Yeah, totally. So Give Directly, as a nonprofit, I mean, what we do is that we raise funds for and we implement, usually fully directly, unconditional cash transfers directly to individuals. And so the bulk of our work has been direct field enrollment in rural areas, but we've been looking to do more, both just working in urban areas, making grants to young people and other vulnerable groups, but especially also thinking about how we can do humanitarian response well. And so our experience with SHOFCO and with other CBOs, I mean, we had initially been engaging with SHOFCO's the Sun Urban Network in Nairobi over the last year or two to engage just sort of as a facilitator to help us connect with youth groups. But then in the context of COVID, we came to Shofco and said, we want to target a large number of individuals quite quickly, and agreed that we would do that to individuals already in Shofco's network. So that was them sharing the details for individuals where we're able to, and then us reaching out, enrolling, and providing cash transfers to some of those individuals. And so, and in addition to that, we've also been having discussions about we're launching a new project together after this, where we'll be combining cash transfers from Give Directly with women's empowerment training that Shofco is providing. But the bulk of our learnings that I think that we'll be talking about in this session is about the COVID experience.
Great, thanks, Mark. And I'm wondering, how does Give Directly think about the prospects of partnership with different organizations? Obviously, this one with Shofco is addressing a specific area, a specific need, but in general, how does the organization approach the process of partnership? What do you look for? What people might be surprised to hear or might not think of naturally in terms of what makes a good partnership fit from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I mean, I think that for a lot of Give Directly's experience, the work we've done work where, you know, we sort of have primarily done work ourselves. And so we, our own field teams engaging directly with households, and a sense in which, especially for cash transfer work, there can be concerns about, you know, like sort of diversion or anything like that. And the way we try to get around that was just to really tightly control it at all steps. I think that COVID has been a really humbling experience for all of us, in part because access and other challenges and the need for quick response has really forced us to realize what is it that we can't necessarily do just by ourselves, or if we wanted to do it like that, it would really hold us back. And so in our situation, what we've been trying to do as a strategy and testing as a number of countries is how can we best recognize sort of the knowledge and experience that community-based organizations, I mean place-based organizations, already have in terms of knowing individuals and communities, in terms of you know, having vulnerables within networks already, in terms of being able to help us enter communities more quickly and do that. And so we've been experimenting with that in Kenya, in Uganda, in Malawi, and now also in Liberia. And I think it's been a really interesting journey. I mean, I think at the start, we came in and we thought, you know, like, you know what we need to do? We just need to find sort of the biggest, best established organizations which have the biggest data sets and, you know, like the most recipients and the most reach. And I mean, clearly there are benefits to that. But what we're also realizing is that the nature of the relationships that organizations have with communities is really important as well. Because I mean, some organizations offer just one specific service to sort of one specific type of partner, and that might work for one thing, but also realizing that sort of how, you know, what we're realizing is that us coming in and engaging may also have impacts for that organization and for its relationship with its sort of constituents and people in that community. And so I think for us, we're now really like learning to step back a bit and just really think about, like, you know, what different roles what different organizations' strengths are, and which ones would sort of have the capacity to engage well, and also where it would fit with the mission which they're trying to do, and where it is a good fit.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So I think Kennedy may be on the verge of joining us, but in preparation for that, Lisa, I would love to hear from you a little bit more about how you in your position think about partnership between organizations and with funders, and particularly how funders can really approach their role in that process to create missions for good outcomes.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I'll just, you know, in advance of Kennedy, share that the Hilton Foundation has we've done a little bit of extra grant making around COVID, and the story with Give Directly and Shofco partnership is we typically don't fund cash transfers, but we recognized what a critical period this has been, particularly in larger urban informal settlements. Right? Conditions have just been dire. And we heard about Give Directly through Kennedy. Because Kennedy is just one of our grassroots partners, we know there are a lot of fantastic efforts using tech, but we really need to know from partners on the ground how it's working, and we need to know that local actors are involved, because as Mark said, in probing, we know that there are rumors, people may not get the payments on their phone, they may not believe it's real, there may be domestic violence that results. So we first heard Kennedy was working with Give Directly, and I thought, oh, we want to talk to Give Directly then. So I think it's about how we foreground, like whose expertise, what works, where's credibility. I think for us, credibility is really with local actors on the ground. And in doing these partnerships, we found we need to ensure that we're bringing together the innovators, like a group like Give Directly, with local actors from the beginning to co-design together, to create conditions for more equal partnership. We need to check in independently with various actors to ensure we have the full story. And the story's always different. You all know on this call, working in communities, it's complicated. And we want to ensure that as a funder, we're really funding the conditions for success. And it often really requires a strong hand to prepare communities, to support communities. I think the other big one is that challenges are great learning opportunities. And as funders, we need to be able to pivot. We need to change course if need be. And we also really need to build in the voice of beneficiaries throughout the process to figure out if we're getting it right. So I hope that's helpful. Again, missing Kennedy. Kennedy apparently can hear us. So Kennedy, we can also have you chatting, right, Cher-Wen? Because we really want to hear from Kennedy as well.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, we definitely do. Okay, so, well, at the very least, we have Kennedy in the chat. That's better than no Kennedy at all. But we're still gonna, I think, keep trying to get him on screen if possible. Maybe then I like, Lisa, that you highlighted the importance of creating conditions for equal partnership. I think that's a big part of what we would really like to dive in this conversation. And I would love to hear from Mark and maybe from Kennedy in the chat until we can get him here, what in practical terms equal partnership looks like, and maybe give some clear examples of when it hasn't happened and what that has looked like, because I think there's there's the description of it as equality, and then there's the experience of it in implementation. I would love to kind of hear what that looks like to you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think there are some parts of it which feel more straightforward, the sort of question around costs being covered or budgets or that sort of piece. And I think, obviously, I'm sure we've all had experiences when that's felt like it hasn't worked, and sort of when it's felt like it has worked. And we've certainly, stumbled our way through bits of that, and sort of not always, and not Give Directly certainly or hasn't always approached that as well as it could, but though I think sort of getting to better places. I do think what I would share here is, I think, and maybe especially for talking to smaller organizations, sort of, listening to this, one interesting experience for me, I mean, Give Directly is certainly by no means the biggest INGO, but definitely the size where, there's more of the comms and the partnerships folks, and then there's the field implementers, and then there's sort of program management folks, and those can all be quite separate in a way which in a smaller organization they might not be. I think one of the things that I've really been grappling with and engaging a lot with Kennedy about personally is, we have to make sure that there's partnership at kind of all elements of that. And what that means is, I mean, and I think it's great engaging with folks like Lisa, because I mean, clearly Lisa is going to, as she's saying, is expecting that what we are communicating is collaborative, or is respectful, and is sort of the full story that we're sharing out. Similarly, how do we ensure that, like, our field teams understand what's expected in terms of engaging with a partner, and sort of, that they can't just kind of push their problems onto the other organization in the other directions, and then also that there are kind of respectful relationships at all of those levels. So I think what's been really interesting for me is, personally building a relationship with Kennedy, but also working hard to make sure that our teams are plugging in the right places. And I think I've been a bit like, I guess we always talk about how important culture is as a part of organizations. The last few months have really made me reflect and think, like, how do I make it feel like, there's a culture of sort of organizations partnering well, rather than just sort of one person knows one person and then they push it down and we sign an agreement and then some stuff happens. And I think it feels like a learning journey, but that's what I've been really reflecting on over the last few.
That's great. I think there's often a dynamic that can emerge when an organization has the opportunity to work with a really well-respected partner, a really well-respected organization, or if there is simply the potential to funding as a part of a partnership that can create an environment where people feel they need to say yes to everything. And a part of what I'm hearing from you, and what I would love to hear teased out a little bit more, is the importance of saying no to some things, or creating clear boundaries, or expressing where a potential plan may not actually be a good fit for a particular location, for a particular community, or even just for a program model. And I think maybe there's probably a lot of organizations here in the chat that have been in positions where parts of a partnership may seem like a great opportunity, other parts may not be, but maybe are sometimes struggling with the right way to negotiate those harder questions or those no's. Do either of you have advice on how to navigate those issues?
I do think the first part of it is that it may be really hard to tell what the risks and the challenges are. I think one thing that I've seen from the smaller organizations which we've worked with, who I think have done this well, has been a real comfort in asking kind of some of these hard questions. And I think, that this is potentially the role that communities of organizations can play well, because you can ask another organization, say, sort of how did it go. In the case of our work, for example, I think that the way that we're enrolling for people for cash transfers inevitably means that we're unlikely to be able to serve every individual if not every individual is registered with the right documents to be able to receive cash transfers, or kind of something like that. And I think hey, Kennedy, I'll wrap that up really quickly so that we can hand over. And I think kind of similarly, there's questions of, if something goes wrong, who's responsible for following up or investigating it or acting on it? And so I think that, like, on the one hand, I think it's on organizations like Give Directly to make sure that we fully disclose all the potential challenges and risks. But I do think that, like, a lot of these things, like, it becomes very clear where the red lines are if you ask these kind of hard questions and work through it. And so I think my takeaway is, like, we just need to have more frank discussions where we say, well, those are all the things which could go right, but, like, these are all the things which could go wrong as well. And if they do go wrong, what will that mean for our two sides? Anyway.
Welcome,
sorry,
Kennedy.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. You just arrived at the perfect segue. I feel like discussion of or talking about frank discussions is perfect for your arrival.
Thank you so much. So I tried to join. I'm glad I'm here now, so we don't want to waste time. So thanks so much for the opportunity. Where am I jumping into? I just feel like I just jump in, you know?
No worries, no worries. Yeah, we're just glad to have you here. So Mark was just kind of talking about, some of the more realistic details of partnership, particularly when it becomes important for organizations to be very frank about challenges that they're facing, or when the original plan or the original idea maybe needs to be revised or completely thrown out the window. I know that you have a lot of experience in this, both with your kind of relationship with Mark and your Give Directly partnership, but overall, I would love to hear from you on kind of examples on when partnership is not exactly as you planned, or the kind of challenges that you encounter and how you approach addressing that with the other organization.
Thank you. I thought I'd give a quick example with our partnership with Mark. I had Mark spoke, so that's good. It was a time of emergency, you know what I mean? So we were just able to jump quickly to work on this because we couldn't wait on, on those kind of things. So what I really loved was, Shofco is not good in giving money. That's not our job. Give directly, that's what they do. And the idea of partnership is when everybody is clear on what they want. So for Give Directly, they are really good in giving. They understand, they have the data, they have the machinery, whereby Shofco have the people and the community. So we're able to come together. And along the way, we learned a lot of things. As Max talked about, one of them was some people are scared of getting money, So we were like, what did we do wrong? So we have to go back and think. We realized that we didn't really communicate with our community, even though we are a local organization, but we didn't really reach out well, to explain. So we had to do that. So that's some of the things that I saw as a learning. But most of the time, partnership must have what is called equal partnership. You know what I mean? Where there is a dignity and where you feel like you also have a seat on the table. And sometimes it's very hard if you are really small organization in a grassroots level because you're looking for resources. So you'll end up just saying yes, yes. So my advice for other leaders, always to be careful. You know what I mean? And be sure on what they're looking for. What are you, first of all, what do you want before partnership? As Give Directly in Shofco, we were clear on the deliverables. So that's kind of my input.
Great. I think there are already questions coming up in the chat about this, but I know that it's something that the three of you would really like to dive into more directly, which is the dynamic that we're all aware of and have experienced in many ways, that there is a severe funding and resource support gap between locally led and internationally led organizations. At Segal Family Foundation, we've really observed how, unfortunately, this has been exacerbated during crisis situations, especially this year during COVID-19 and the year 2020, where local organizations are really essential to emergency response efforts, but receive a disproportionately small share of the funding to carry out that work. This is just one of really many facets of the reasons why there have been a lot of persistent calls to decolonize practices in international development work. And I'm really curious what each of you think is required to really change this dynamic. We know that it's pervasive, it's systemic, there's no single answer, but I would love to kind of start chipping away at the idea of what is required to take on the work of decolonization and partnerships in earnest, both from the perspective of funder practices. I'm sure, Lisa, you have some thoughts there, but also inter-organizational advocacy.
So Lisa, you want to say something?
I'll jump in. I just want to say there's been so many important conversations again around racial equity and colonialism. Kennedy, we were listening to you, I think maybe 2 weeks ago on a DevX Hilton session on this. And it's clear that the need to really look at how much funding's going to grassroots leaders and organizations has been really highlighted. And I think as funders, we're taking in our sector of philanthropy a very close look. Within our strategies, we're doing things like assessing where are we right now? What's our baseline? How much money is going to organizations led by people of color working in the US, local leaders, African leaders for our work in East and Southern Africa? And then what's the approach going to be to increase that metrics? I think we need to have metrics and hold ourselves accountable. I think we also need to look at the fact that our staffing models mean we're often funding. Kennedy, would you go on mute for a second? Because I think we are getting some background. Excellent, thanks, Kennedy. I think we'll continue to fund internationally led organizations that will subcontract local partners. And I think what we've learned is we need some visibility into those subcontracts, because you're all smaller organizations on the call, national NGOs, you've all been in these situations where the INGO has the budget, you have a smaller piece, you may not feel like you have the resources you need to do the work. You're often doing the lion's share of the work. And I think we've realized we really need visibility to look at that and to kind of query and question the equal sharing of resources. The other piece is we're flipping the model over, and a lot of large donors like the US government is as well to say, wait a minute, there's strong national NGOs. They should be the prime implementer, and we need to start having them subcontract the INGOs for the technical assistance, because the INGOs aren't the implementers anymore for the most part. And so I think we're experimenting with that model, and it's working quite well, quite frankly, and there's nothing like funding flow to shift the power dynamic. It's who's accountable for the funds. So if the local organization has the direct contract with the funder, they're responsible. They have that power, and we hear directly from them on how things are going. So I think we recognize that more equitable coalitions are needed with clear and transparent roles for both local and international actors. We also need to make sure as funders we're supporting local leadership, organizational growth and development. It may be executive coaching, strategic planning. As you all know, you often get funding requests, and it's all about delivering targets, right? Reaching people, but you need funding for your organizations. If we want more equitable partnerships, we have to have stronger local organizations. So my advice is ask for what you need when you're negotiating with a funder, including setting up conditions for sustainability. It may be consultants for your strategic planning, et cetera, so you can catch a breath and again, be supporting your organizational health. Thanks.
Yes. So thanks, Lisa. I really agree with you on that. I have some good news and bad news for the audience. Number one, where does the resources come from? It mostly comes from the West. And the West, they have their own playbook, the North. So we find ourselves as leaders in the continent having a hard time. So the first thing you have to learn is, what is their playbook? And I'm sorry, I say this is a very bad thing to say, but it's the truth. So when I was in the US, going to school there, I learned something, that the grassroots organizations that were having a white partner did so well. And I'm sorry to say that, I could go to meeting, I put my wife Jessica, and she will speak their language. But this is the good news. The world is changing, and I'm telling everyone who is listening. I remember when we first received the Hilton Prize Award. That was a big deal to be the first organization from Kibera Slum to receive that. We have seen what's happening in the US, in the world as a whole, racial discrimination, even the nonprofits. So I think it's a high time for us to put our house in order. I have seen the argument. I went to talk to the USID, they tell me their stories about the community leaders. They're like, they are not structured well. Corruption. And that corruption is also part of colonial mind. How do you know they're corrupted? You are just assuming that they are corrupted. Another thing they use, and you cannot scale. Because you are why? You cannot scale, you see? So it's a challenge. But my advice, seize the moment. This is the moment that there's a little bit of light, the truth is coming out, and put your house in order. Ensure that you have structures so that you can also excel. Because for a long time, foundation really want to help the grassroots organization. And I'm really proud and happy. I don't want to give them too much credit, but it's a fact. Segal Family Foundation, I'm sorry. You are the first one. I remember that, you really, originally, you were doing it. And for many times you got in troubles. People are like, why? They don't even have a bank account. But what you did was that you are trying to prepare them. So I want to use Shofco as a good example. Through Segal Foundation, we were able to grow our structures. Through that, we were passed over, and now we are able to receive the Hilton Prize Award. So I believe that although as we complain, yes, there is racism in philanthropy, but we can beat it. And this is a time that the world is listening for grassroots leaders. There's no way I can come to your house. I want to clean your house. Let's be honest. I don't know the corners of your house. I need people living in that house to tell me where are the corners, where are the plates, where is the coffee. Otherwise, it's a common sense. So thank you.
Jump on that for 1 second. I just want to say what Kennedy said about the North. It's kind of about who is accountable to who. And it's true, we're accountable to our board and our leadership. And I think with COVID, we really need to look at who's accountable to the community. And when COVID hit, it was really obvious. The international NGOs had to stay home, had to stay in their homes in Nairobi. It was the local NGOs that were out there, despite the risks, delivering to their community. So I think we learned it with HIV, we're seeing it again with COVID. We've really got to look at making sure resources get to those directly accountable to their communities. Thanks, Kennedy. And we have a lot of work to do to navigate what we need to do with our boards in the North and educating them on what the community says and needs in the South. And that will always be a dance. But I really appreciate, Kennedy, we need much more foregrounding of what the realities are and what the accountability is to the communities we seek to serve. Thanks.
I guess just to jump in here, one thing I've been reflecting on is like, can you hear me? Hello, Cher-Wen, can you hear me? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, it probably just also attached to that, being really clear about what the power of the grassroots organization is and what you're kind of really bringing to the table, and being really comfortable articulating that well. I mean, because I think about Give Directly doing it or otherwise, we are not engaging with grassroots organizations to just try and cut costs. But usually I think like what we are increasingly, or at least what I see across our teams is, if you want to, I mean, there's a huge push around accountability, around safeguarding, around sort of basically ensuring that programs are respecting communities and are engaging there. And so I think there is just something really interesting there. I think that for a lot of, and I think we've seen it in a lot of the conversations with Shofco, we're not coming in saying, oh, can you organize to go and give out some cash transfers? More the discussion is us coming in and saying, how do you do accountability structures in a community? How do you engage people and how do you get them to give feedback so you know what's happening? So that sort of, for the big INGO, the way that they find out something's going wrong isn't that they sort of see it on the front page of the newspaper and those types of ways. And so I think there is a real ability for smaller organizations to kind of articulate that in a way which is not simply saying, oh, we'll do some work for you, bigger organization, but more like, wow, just think about your blind spots, think about, all these themes in the sector around sort of accountability, around, protecting, around safeguarding, around different pieces, which you sort of really need to know well, and just having real deep expertise in those, even if of course your primary focus is a different area. I just think there's a real, like, there are just certain areas where collaboration is optional, you know, and then there's other areas where it's not optional. And I think especially if you're sort of demonstrating strength in the areas where it's not optional, then, you know, then you know, the international organizations will have no choice but to collaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the imbalances described in these power dynamics, I think the funding gap, Kennedy, that you have referenced, both in international work and for those tuning in from the US for nonprofits in the United States, is often also mirrored by an authority gap in terms of who is presumed to have authority on various types of models, impact interventions, et cetera, who is assumed to be an expert who deserves certain types of support. And I think, as Lisa said, a lot of that responsibility does fall to funders in terms of poor practices historically. We know this for a fact in terms of the percentage of funding that goes to locally led organizations. And I think that unfortunately, a lot of conversations around this gap only talk about, and I appreciate, Kennedy, that you brought up Shofco as an example, and we at SFF are very lucky to be associated with Shofco and your story. But I think there, you know, a part of it is what you described in terms of having the resources to really build up your organization. But I think we also have to acknowledge that even absent different measures of organizational maturity, even then, the gap is still persistent. And then I think the responsibility is on funders to say, why are we biased in our funding? What is it in our processes that is leading this to happen? But I would love to hear a little bit more, especially from both Kennedy and Mark, about particularly the ways that stereotypes about your organizations have flattened your ability to respond or to respond fully. I think particularly, and we've discussed this before as a group, the tendency to flatten international organizations into pure kind of models of impact and innovation, but without any local connections or insights into implementation. And then on the flip side, local grassroots organizations having a lot of insights about community, but not necessarily being hubs of innovation or technology or other things. And I think really, especially in the cases of each of your organizations, you embody all of those things. So I would love to hear a little bit more about the ways in which that may have happened to you or your organizations, and what you think organizations and funders can do to open up that understanding.
I was waiting for Mark. Yeah, anyway, yeah. So it's, of course, as I talk about it before, it's all about the stereotypes. And for example, our continent has been seen in many ways. Any organization coming from this continent is, the first thing they see in you is, you cannot deliver, you are corrupted. That's a stereotype. How do you know they're corrupted? And something that they're going to bring to you is, you are not innovative, which I hate. Sorry, you know, I really believe, and as Lisa talked about it, I just feel like the best thing that will prove us that local organization are the solution is during COVID. That's when big organization, WHO, telling us what is called social distancing. And people not to go out. And forgetting that some people live in a congested place. They are sharing a toilet with over 50 families. There's some people live in informal settlement. You know what I mean? So what are the solution? Is upon the local organization to come up with the ideas. I mean, and where they find partner like Give Directly, that food was mostly important. That social distancing was a privileged thing for those who have fridges in their house, for those who are living material life, but not those who are living in the community, who are really normal. You know, who knows the answer? Is the local organization. So this COVID has really taught us a lot that solutions in the community. And we have seen, as I was looking at my numbers and seeing how much, for example, with Shofco, with Give Directly, we have reached over 35,000 people who could not even afford to have food, were struggling. You know what I mean? But through, and then we have to be accountable to our community. Somebody asked that. So Shofco, through their network, were able to bring these names, partner with the Give directly, they were able to get food. It was a moment of need. It was a moment of emergency. So for this challenge for us has proved that if you give local organization opportunity, most of the time decisions are made from New York, from London, from DC, and they're really forced to a thought. And I'm one of the people, I won't lie. When I was starting Shofco with 20 cents, I remember I was scared of losing money. I was scared of, and most of the time I messed up by just saying yes, yes, yes. The moment I became much more to say the truth, the moment I say, no, this is what we believe in. So my message is that we also need to teach from those people from the West, also in Africa. We are the ones on the ground. If we keep on saying yes, yes, we are destroying our future and the future of the future entrepreneurs. So it's high time for local organization also to speak the truth and say, okay, no, this cannot work in our community. I'm sorry. Okay? You get what is called respect, and they're gonna come back to you. You don't need to always to say yes, yes. Then the last one, for other leaders in our country and in the continent, it's high time successful local organization to start supporting the upcoming one, and to have this what's called a learning journey. Shofco, how did you make it there? So I think people like Shofco and other, we have many of them in Africa, they should start really supporting each other. And also, I'm sorry to say this, and also trying to tell them about the game. It's a system. I'm sorry. It's a system that you have to break. Thank you.
I certainly can't top that. But no, it's interesting. I mean, I think it's something I reflect on. I mean, I think that Give Directly certainly comes in as a brand, as a sort of a, I think some people almost imagine that we're just a tech platform that lives in New York and presses buttons and money lands in people's wallets. And, and of course I, have to remind them that actually, no, we're across in different countries, and most of our teams are, almost all of our teams are Africans in the country in which they live, doing work in communities that they really care about. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, I think the biggest risk is that we all get sort of pigeonholed and stereotyped as sort of one as one thing or the other. I think there's probably also just something about really getting out of our comfort zones. I mean, I think for me, I've you can't do this stuff overnight. And if the first time I'd ever heard of Shofco was at the start of COVID, or the first time I'd ever heard of Segal was at kind of even at the start of COVID, it would have been a lot harder. I mean, in the case of Segal, I've sort of known David Auerbach and other folks sort of for quite a while there, and I think that just being exposed to people in those sort of different approaches and different organizations, I think really breaks down the barriers and allows you to sort of start to respect and engage more. And I mean, I think that the story which Lisa told at the start of her reconsidering Give Directly after hearing from Kennedy is a really powerful one, and one which I'll certainly take back, because I think it is a powerful one in the INGO space, about making sure that we are sort of really reconsidering sort of these environments. I think it also gets to how do you think about what innovation is and how you're trying it. I mean, in our case, I think what I've really tried to have each of our country teams do is say, well, by all means, think about what you can do innovatively. Innovation might look like, oh, you're working with a mobile network operator to target in a new way, but it might also look like a new collaborative partnership with different organizations in a different way. And we can't do all of it, but we should try things, and we should build milestones where we stop if it sort of doesn't work. And I don't know. I mean, Give Directly is known for what for its core brand, but I would love to see that the framing of how we're thinking about supporting communities being something where we can really engage well with local organizations as well. I mean, it's hard work along the way, but it's a fun journey to go down, and I've been very grateful to get to engage with Kennedy and other folks in part of this.
Thanks so much, Mark. So we talk about partnership. There's something I don't want to forget. We are not kicking out international organizations from Africa. We are not kicking you out. We love them, to be clear. But it's really sad to see that a New York organization or London also hiring a white person in Kenya or in Uganda or in the context of the ground. The issue that I really love so much about what we give directly, Mark, a Kenyan, we could talk, understand the dimension. So it's easier for you, Mark, to understand the issues of the community than somebody from New York. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think, like, as we talk about partnership, also don't forget that if you are going to Kenya, it's okay to have somebody from New York, but please, please make sure you also have a Kenyan in that office. If you go to Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, it will be very powerful for you to get the local context that will help you in collaboration. Thank you.
Come in, Cher-Wen, just a few thoughts. I just think the term innovation is really loaded, right? And we need to look at who defines what's innovative and innovative for whom. In the North, we love tech and we love ideas that get pitched, and the people who have the staff to pitch the ideas are the international NGOs. But we've got, I joke about the app graveyard, right? How many apps have been developed that went nowhere because they didn't have the local backing, right? So we really have to go back to look at how colonial thinking continues to influence the development sector, implication that innovation comes from the North, all the innovative approaches that local organizations are employing, but that we don't hear about. Why don't we hear about them? One, we're starting to realize Northerners need to insist that a local organization is on every panel that we're sitting on. So we're looking at making sure we're foregrounding, creating that space at the table that just hasn't been there. But I also, what strikes me in this conversation is I had to go to see Shofco. I went to see Shofco in 2013, right after I started. And you're right, Segal had already started supporting Shofco. When I saw it, I was blown away. And I've been in development for 25. I said, wow, we need to kind of create opportunities for you all that are doing great things to have ways to showcase that experience. Communications, I've often thought I should be funding somebody to go around, do the interviews, make glossy booklets, the websites, right? So some of it is just finding ways for you to tell your stories, because we all can't visit every single community to see what you're doing. And then I also love the point somebody made about creating coalitions and this collective voice and power and leverage that you have, advocacy, as well as what Kennedy said about really creating space to share experience and mentor one another. So I think lots of opportunity to further advance this work, and I'm taking away some great thoughts from this. Thanks.
Listen, a question for you, just to share with us here. Do you think they are ready to listen? These innovations, what we are talking about. What do you think now? Do you think they are ready to listen?
Yeah, you mean like sort of Northern folks that hold the power. And I think that people need to be educated, Kennedy. And I'll just say one quick thing. There's a lot of, arrogance sometimes and hubris in the North where we think, oh, we, show me the innovate. But when you take people to the field, we took our board to visit Zambia in 2015, and they're still referencing people just need context and they need to be educated. And I think with COVID, I like to feel like we're all realizing, holy cow, the inequities are everywhere and we've got to get serious about this. So I think we've really got to it's translating the messages so that they can hear it. And that's where I think sometimes it's communications expertise that as technical people we don't have. I like to think this is a moment where there is more willingness to listen that we really have to seize. I'm an optimist.
Thank you.
And I think, I mean, just on that point, I mean, coming at this from the cash transfer movement, I think there is a real opportunity for small organizations to think about like how to frame it in the same way. I mean, ultimately, you know, Give Directly has had to overcome this battle that, you know, that poor people don't have good sense, right? That, you know, the reason people are poor is because they can't make good decisions. And a lot of our work has been around being like, no, actually, you give resources to people who previously didn't have the resources. They make better allocation decisions than experts might. And you don't have to pay the experts, and so you can actually do it pretty efficiently, and you and good things happen. And we've seen such a scale up of that kind of work. I do think for folks working in this space of supporting smaller grassroots organizations, I think there's sort of a similar framing around how are you seeding lots of you know, how are you seeding lots of like small innovators to do this well, and how do you demonstrate and actually show that the collective impact across all of that is big and impressive in exactly the same way that we're kind of doing in the sort of the cash transfer space. And I think just there seems to be, you know, it's obviously it's a cynical view where we look and we say, wow, these other programs or the aid sector has promised and not delivered. Let's do simpler things. But I think that does create opportunities for folks looking to try and find a way to channel more resources to more smaller organizations and coalitions. I think probably in the same way that it's doing for us with cash transfer.
That's great, everyone. These insights are really helpful. And I think to put a little piece in for Segal Family Foundation, I would like to make it clear for anybody in this session who is less familiar with our foundation, a part of why we're able to do great events like this and a part of why we get to work with so many great local organizations is because our grant making team is entirely African and based in the countries that they work in. And I really appreciate the centering of the importance of local insight and local leadership here, because I think we all agree here and we know that local leadership is not just a matter of representation, about recognizing that local knowledge, local expertise. I see also that there are several questions in the chat that are a little bit related, so I'm going to have a little bit, or I'm going to smush them together a bit. I see that Sarah and Chilande have asked a question, or have asked questions about what it means to dissolve or transition out of partnerships and what are good practices in closing out, and how to do that without particularly messy issues getting in the way.
Yes, I think the best way to do is, I'm a really strong believer of contract. I think what they do for grassroots organizations or local organizations, they treat them like petty organizations. So they don't need to have, you know very well that when big organizations are dealing with each other, there is a clear contract that says we're going to trade this for 1 year or 2 years. And I think my advice for you is that let's stop informal partnership. I think they're going to respect you so much. Believe me, if you say, okay, we want to work with you, thank you so much, but let's make a contract. They write it to you, you look at it, I'm like, change this, you know? That's called dignity. Anyway, I love it. And then, in the contract is written, if things go well, we can writing each other. So it's not a big deal for me. I think when you are really clear on what you want to deliver, after 1 year, after 6 months, you can review. I remember Mark and I, we worked on that. It was amazing, whereby we can review back again and be like, okay, Mark, let's look again what are the success, what are the challenges? You know, so for my answer, as somebody coming from a local organization, it is good to have a clear contract.
Probably the other side of that as well is like probably what stage you're having the discussion and what you're doing. I mean, I think if there's a fear that you might get in too deep, then you might want to say, is there a way that you can do one thing and then do another thing? You know, is there a way to almost make it more milestone or stage based, so that there's ways to kind of back out of it along the way, which people engage with. I do think that, like, it's a lot easier to have these discussions than to not have them. I think that, like, often sometimes these discussions, like, if you don't have an open discussion about things aren't working, or we'd want to stop, or we want to change, it can just feel like it just is like, oh, do you respect me? Do I respect you? Why aren't you doing this? But if you realize, like, actually it's not that we're trying to disrespect each other. It's just that, like, something that was working before isn't working as well. Then it's just a pragmatic discussion. You realize, like, actually, you know, and we had that. I mean, you know, Kennedy shared an update with our team that a component of what we were engaging on together didn't make sense for Shofco anymore. And I think actually it was really, I appreciated that he shared that in a fair amount of detail, so our team could see it. And I think a lot of people in our team who were a bit, like, wondering how things were going, they kind of read it and they were like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. If I was in that position, I would feel the same way too. So I do think that, like, sometimes just trying to find ways to have those candid discussions can make it, can be a lot easier. And that, like, probably if you're worried about having the discussion, people will see it, right? You know, like, if you're in something and you're not really in it to be successful, it's not going to work out anyway. So just kind of recognizing that, like, you can't hide from the hard discussion.
I do want to recognize that we are, I think, 1 minute away, or almost at the end of our session. So just in case we get booted off, I do want to thank all three of you for joining us today and sharing your insights. Perhaps we can continue to revisit all of the future summit sessions in the chat, also in the social media chatter online. I know you all have so many more things to share and more insights to talk about, but I really appreciate you squeezing in some of that knowledge during this hour today.
And thank you, Cher-Wen, for doing a fabulous job leading us. This was an honor to join the discussion. Thanks to everybody who participated.
Thanks so much, Gerald. Yeah. I like the one you say, local knowledge is technical expertise. That's a beautiful one. Thanks, that's amazing. And Mark and Lisa, thank you so much. It was a good panel and I learned a lot. Asante.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to everyone in the chat. We can't see your faces, but we do see your comments, and we're so happy to have you here. We really appreciate you joining our session today.